Good evening and Happy New Year. Welcome to the annual organizational meeting of the Boston School Committee. I hope that everyone had a restful break and holiday season. We'll begin with Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, once again, welcome. I see we have a few new faces in the audience and some folks returning. It's nice to have a crowd with us for what's historically the shortest meeting of the year. Let's keep it that way. I want to first begin by welcoming our newest member, Mr. Kwok Tran. Welcome, Mr. Tran.
Thank you.
And Mr. Tran is joining us as our newest member of the school committee on a 4-year appointment. Mr. Tran is a civil rights attorney by trade, a longtime resident of West Roxbury and a newer resident of Dorchester. He's been a parent of 4 children in the BPS, 1 student still in the BPS at the Boston Latin School. And way back when, I was taking a look at your resume and your application, you once taught in the Boston Public Schools as well.
Yes.
And so we're eager to have your perspective and your voice added to the discussions here on the committee. Do you want to say a few words before we move on?
I'll let it bypass at this point.
Okay. Well, we certainly will have an opportunity with a larger crowd and a televised meeting on January 16th if you'd like to say a few words of introduction.
Thank you. I will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Tran. I also want to congratulate Ms. Jerry Robinson, our current school committee member, on her reappointment to the committee for another 4-year term. Ms. Robinson, as folks will notice, is not with us. She's recovering from a knee replacement surgery that she took mere hours after our last meeting in December. And she hopes to join us later this month. And if she's watching at home, hello, Jerry, and we hope you get well soon. We'll get her sworn in as soon as possible as well. We'll look forward to welcoming her back later this month. So with that, I want to move on first to the first item on our agenda, which is the approval of the 2019 meeting calendar. And my fellow members, each of you has a copy of the calendar in front of you. I'd like to entertain a motion now to approve this calendar as presented, recognizing that at times we might have to make changes to accommodate any special circumstances that may arise. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver-Davila. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Is there any discussion to the motion? Is there any objection to approving the calendar by unanimous consent? Excuse me. Well, hearing none, the motion carries and the calendar is approved. I'll move on now to the election of officers for 2019, starting with the chairperson. At this time, I'd like to issue a call for nominations for the chairperson.
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate you, Michael Leconto, for chair of the school committee for a 2nd year.
Well, thank you, Mr. O'Neill. I appreciate that, especially coming from a former chair.
I should say, in light of your good work in the past year and how you have guided us through some things, appreciate the work that you've done again, and I'm honored to nominate you.
Well, thank you, Mr. O'Neill. I appreciate that.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Dean Coleman, we were moving us right along. Are there any other nominations for the position of chairperson? Hearing none, I'd like to close out the nominations for chairperson. Is there a motion, once again?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Is there a second? Oh, thank you, Mr. Tran. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Is there any objection to approving the motion by unanimous consent? Well, thank you. Hearing none, the nominations for chairperson are now closed, and I will thank you. I will accept this nomination, and I look forward to leading this committee and more appropriately being a vessel of the committee for another year. This is, this isn't an easy position, as a number of folks on the committee know that have either served in the committee in this position or been through a number of the conversations that we've had, but we've got a long year ahead of us. We've got a lot of urgent issues ahead of us. We've got to hire a superintendent, as we all know. We certainly have to move forward with a number of urgent decisions around Build BPS. And you know what? We still have to get done the work of the district. And putting students first has always been my approach, as I know it is each one of the members on the committee. And I am certainly eager to get to work and continue that work. So at this time, you know what? I think these notes are out of order here, but I think I have to entertain a motion once again to elect me, Michael Locanto, as the chairperson of the committee.
So moved.
Is there?
Second.
And thank you, Mr. Dean Coleman. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Ms. Sullivan, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Oliver Davila?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Tron?
Yes.
Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Locanto?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Oh, well, thank you, Ms. Sullivan, and pardon my eagerness to get back to work. Once again, I thank you, and I look forward to working with you again and leading collaboratively this district and this committee in the coming year. We'll move on now to the position of vice chair. At this time, I'd like to first turn to our current vice chair for some comments.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank you and the members of the committee and the City of Boston for the opportunity to serve as vice chair over the past couple of years. It was wonderful working with both Michaels over that time. As I came into the position after following some work in the district as we were going through transitions between superintendents and the school assignment, I thought that was an area of expertise that I brought to it, and I think now as we're going forward to a new phase with a new mayor, with a new superintendent, it's opportunity for new leadership to emerge as the board is transitioned, and I want to end with a sincere and heartfelt nomination of Ms. Oliver Davila to become the next vice chair, because I think the work that we have to do around community engagement and a focus on our historically disenfranchised population is significant to the district, and she'll be a wonderful person to provide wisdom and guidance in that area.
Well, thank you, Dean Coleman, and I want to thank you, obviously for your service, your guidance. It's been a pleasure serving with you in your capacity as the vice chair, and you're certainly not going anywhere, obviously, as a member of this body. But certainly having your counsel, having your consistent approach, your expansive experience in higher education, in K-12 education, has certainly been a touchstone for me. And I've certainly appreciated this time that we've worked together, and appreciate once again your service in this role. So thank you. I want to thank you as well for the nomination for Ms. Oliver Davila. I do want to ask for any seconds for that nomination.
Enthusiastically.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Are there any more nominations for the position of vice chair? Hearing none, I'd like to close out the nominations for vice chair, and is there a motion to close out those nominations?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tron. Is there any discussion to the motion?
Mr. Chair, before we close it out, I would like to also echo your comments to Dean Coleman for the excellent work he did as vice chair for 5 years now, I believe. I think
Too old to keep track.
I know. Well, I'm pretty old too, but I do keep track, and I think since Ms. Harris stepped off to the committee, you stepped up as vice chair, and in a number of my years as chair, we worked together. And I just want to thank you for your thoughtfulness. I can't begin to count the number of phone calls we had together to talk through an issue of the district, and you always kept me focused on topic, pushed my thinking one way or another, got me to think it through logically, rationally, and I know you did the same thing with Superintendent Chang as well, and with other members of the committee. So it was an absolute delight to work with you as vice chair, and I look forward to continue working with you on the committee. So thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Where are we now? Is there any objection to approving that motion by unanimous consent? Well, hearing none, the nominations for vice chair are now closed. And at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to elect Ms. Oliver Davila as the vice chair of the Boston School Committee.
So moved.
Thank you, Dean Coleman. Is there any discussion or objection? Excuse me, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Ms. Sullivan, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Oliver Davila,
It feels weird to vote for myself, but yes, I vote for myself.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Tron,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Lecanto.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Well, thank you, Ms. Sullivan, and congratulations, Ms. Oliver Davila. This is,
Thank you for
Very
your
much appreciated.
kind words and your trust. I hope that I can do the best job that I can. And thank you to Dean Coleman as well. I want to echo all of the thoughtful comments. I have learned so much from you, and I'm glad you're still going to be on the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver Davila. And, you know, I have to say, we've worked together for a number of years now, and, you know, I count you as I do all of our fellow members as a very close confidant and, you know, speaking about, you know, the urgent issues in front of this district. And, you know, you're always ready to answer the call. You provide the counsel that we need in order to get this, keep this district moving on the right track. And I'll mention specifically, you know, the work that you have done over the last few months with the Superintendent Search Committee has been nothing short of extraordinary. And for that, I am deeply indebted because I called upon you to do so, and you answered the bell without hesitation. And the work that's been done to keep that process moving has been all due to your hard work and efforts. And so we're deeply indebted, and we know that we're off on the right foot with that process. So we look forward to having you continue to contribute in that way, and in this leadership position, I look forward eagerly to working with you on the business of the committee. So if there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, may I make
Yes.
one comment before we adjourn?
Yes.
First of all, congratulations to you for your reelection. You have done a great job guiding us this past year, and look
Thank you.
forward to the coming year as well.
Appreciate
Ms.
that.
Oliver Davila, thank you for stepping up to be vice chair. You've done an outstanding job in so many ways. I love working with you on alternative ed, everything we work on together, and I think of everyone at the table, you and I have known each other the longest, right, and have worked together for many years, so look forward to you in the new role. I also feel an obligation to express my thanks to Dean Robinson, who is no longer on the committee. She served 4 great years on the committee, a very thoughtful, passionate, articulate communicator, focused on student rights, parents' rights. You know, every meeting without fail, we knew Dean Robinson were going to ask what the parental involvement is, and we appreciated the viewpoint that she brought on that. Very focused as well, her, you know, a number of children in the Boston Public Schools, including a child with special needs, and taught us all a lot about special needs. And I first got to know Dean Robinson through SpedPAC, and then when she became involved in the Superintendent Search Committee before she was on the school committee. And she was an excellent addition at that as well. So, Dean Robinson, I'm not sure if you're watching at home or are at work right now at Cambridge College, but thank you very much for your service for 4 years, and thoroughly enjoyed working with you, and I'm sure we'll find a new way for you to continue to be involved and continue to advocate for the children that we collectively serve.
Well, thank you, Mr. O'Neill, and I appreciate that sentiment, and I certainly want to make sure that we thank Dean Robinson for her service once again when we have our full meeting on January 16th. And she and I have been in contact, and I do want to make sure that, to your point, we find a way to keep her involved with the schools. And so I thank you for that eloquent tribute, and I'm sorry that I didn't do that earlier.
Yep,
This is
thank
what-
you for saying that. I think we all feel the same, and we're going to miss her tremendously. But she's not gone. But we do thank her for the work, so thank you for saying that.
And we do also welcome Mr.
Yes,
Todd.
and we welcome
Thank
as
you.
well.
You're going to bring a great voice to the committee as well, and we will
Absolutely.
learn from your expertise and experience.
Thank you. I will try. It's an honor to work with all of you, and I hope that my somewhat humble experience will add to the diversity of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Tron, and to my fellow members. If there's nothing further, I'll now entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. I do want to recognize Ms. Oliver Davila, your daughter's in the audience as well. I meant to do that earlier. The little one I had my daughters here last year, so,
Yep.
um,
She was here too last year.
yeah.
Yep, she loved your
And I
daughters.
think we've been looking for a play date ever since.
Yes, I was
so,
gonna
you
say,
know,
she
we'll-
still
we'll get
wants
to
a
that
play
at
date
some
with
point,
your,
but,
with your daughters.
but hello, Marley, and thank you for coming out.
It's the one meeting she can come to that's not till 1 o'clock in the morning. So
Exactly.
I figured this way she at least sees what,
Well, if you want, we can, open up new business.
Does anyone want to testify? Okay, no. If there's nothing further, I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
All right, thank you, Ms. Oliver Davila. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Looks like we are all in unanimous consent. We'll thank you now, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here for our first regularly scheduled meeting of the year, which is Wednesday, January 16th at 6 p.m. Have a good evening, folks.